This holiday season, you might be meeting up with your parents for the first time in a while, or if you have a significant other, you might be meeting their parents for the first time. Maybe you thought your parents died a long time ago, just to realize now that they're still alive. Or maybe that you were taken away from your parents as a child and you thought you'd never see them again, and now you are. Or maybe as a young girl, your parents locked you up in a tower, but finally a green man rescued you, and now you're gonna see them for the first time. If you're dealing with any of these dilemmas this holiday season, don't worry because Dreamworks has made a movie about it, specifically a sequel. So let's talk about the Meet the Parents sequel. First, I think we have to talk about what makes a good sequel and what people want to see in a sequel to a movie. And these are the main two reasons that I came up with. One is world building. You want to expand that world that our protagonist has lived in, maybe go to a different location or meet some new characters in the same location, anything that just expands the world building of the world that we already knew. And the second reason is we want to see the character use that lesson that they learned in the first movie and be a different person because they went through the arc in the first movie. Now they have new values, and we want to see those new values they gained tested by the antagonist of the sequel to really show their growth here. And possibly maybe an old character from the first movie dies. I'm just saying that could also be an option of what people want to see. Now, one by one, let's break down all the Meet the Parents sequels Dreamworks has produced in no particular order. First is Madagascar Escape to Africa, which I just realized while making this video that the first movie takes place in Madagascar, which is in Africa. Madagascar is an African country that is recognized to be in the continent Africa. So you're not escaping to Africa if you're already in Africa. I just wanted to get that out there. But technically, yes, Alex and the gang leave the island of Madagascar and then crash land on the mainland continent of Africa to where Alex meets his parents. As we see in a flashback, Alex was, taken away by hunters, but he was able to break loose of the truck, and then he just kind of floated down a river in a box. And that's, I guess, how he ended up at a zoo in New York. So all this time, his parents thought that Alex was dead. We never see Alex again. But here he comes, crash lands conveniently right to where his parents are. He meets his parents. He sees that they both have an Africa-shaped birthmark on their paw. Really, Alex's main conflict throughout this whole movie is his identity crisis between being an African lion or a New York lion, because he wants to fit in with his family and the cultural norms that they have, but really he's not that tough. He has to beat someone in a fist fight in order to be allowed into the tribe or whatever. And he loses because he can't fight and he's not physically strong. But in the big climax, he gets out of the situation they're in by dancing and doing his New York thing. And his dad learns to, love him for who he is, I guess. And who he is really that New York lion. And you'll see later that this is really a trend, but there are themes of his parents saying, "I lost you once, I'm not gonna lose you again." This is basically what they say when Alex feels sad that he doesn't fit into the tribe and he leaves. And his parents are like, "We're losing him again," because, they lost him as a baby and now he's walking away. Next, let's talk about How to Train Your Dragon 2. Basically, at the start of the movie, Hiccup's dad is like, "Hey, you're gonna be the new chief." And he's like, "I don't want to be the new chief. I'm too young. I'm not ready for this. You're doing a really good job as chief, and you should keep doing that for a long time." As Hiccup really just wants to ride Toothless around and discover new areas. He has this little map where he draws out new islands. And then eventually he runs into his mom, which he thought was dead. But he also runs into these people who want to capture dragons to create this dragon army and take over the world, whatever. And Hiccup's big conflict is whether or not is he more of a pacifist who thinks that he can talk himself out of a situation, or does he really need to do what he needs to do in order to protect his people? Because his dad on one hand is like, "Hey, you gotta be able to protect your people no matter what. If you're the chief, the people's safety comes first, even if that means hurting other people." But then his mom, I guess, is over here like, "Hey, you can be a pacifist and just show people like how they're capable of love or something. Basically, Hiccup thinks he can talk the bad guy out of doing bad things, and no one has to get hurt. This is unfortunately dropped by the climax when, spoiler alert, Hiccup's dad dies, and then Hiccup's like, "Oh well, I guess I'm gonna hurt people now," and there goes that storyline. But whatever. But the time Hiccup's dad and mom have together are very sweet. It's very cute, very heartwarming. You know, there's the whole meme, "You're as beautiful as the day I lost you." That's a great line. And I really enjoyed this movie. It sounds like I'm hating on it, but it's a good movie and a good sequel. Then there's him and Astrid, whose relationship isn't really advanced anymore in this movie. It's just that she's just a really supportive girlfriend, and I think their relationship has more stuff going on in the third movie, but I've never seen the third movie, so I can't say. Him and Toothless, their relationship is about the same. It's really the main point of this movie is the relationship between Hiccup and his dad, but the two of them don't really have that much screen time together anyway. He's with his mom most of the time, which is cute and all, but yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention basically how Hiccup got separated from his mom, or should I say mom got separated from Hiccup, is that there was a dragon attack back in the day, and the dragon, his mom thought was going to kidnap Hiccup, so his mom like basically sacrificed herself to save baby Hiccup and like got flown away, therefore leaving the dad and Hiccup by themselves, thinking that their mom is just dead because she got abducted in a dragon attack. Oh yeah, and guess what also theme is in this? I lost you once, I can't lose you again. But this time it's more between the mom and the dad, of the dad being like, I lost you once, I don't want to lose you again, all that stuff. So yeah, also, that goes same with the mom. Yeah, that's a theme. Now let's talk about Kung Fu Panda 3. Basically, how this movie starts is that Master Shifu's like, hey, I'm done teaching. Po's the Dragon Warrior. Po, you're going to be the teacher now. And Po's like, I'm not ready to teach. But he tries to teach and he sucks at it. Few minutes go by. Boom, we see a panda in the noodle shop owned by Po's dad. And this panda turns out to be Po's actual biological father. Because there's just no other pandas around, and he like eats a lot, I guess. And Poe's like, oh my gosh, Dad, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm looking for my son. It's like, oh, how does he know he has a son here? That'll be revealed later. But then, you know, his dad's like, hey, come with me. There's a whole panda village. Go back to your panda roots. And Poe's like, sure. And then Poe's goose dad is like, wait, I don't feel comfortable with this. And then he tags along as well. I really liked the conflict between Poe's adoptive dad and his biological dad as they sort of like kind of fight over him, but they learn that it's not a competition between them. It's just that they're both there to help Poe grow and be loved, and they're always going to be there for him. And I thought that aspect was very sweet. But guess what Poe is dealing with this entire time? An identity crisis of whether or not he relates to more of his birth land, home nation, of his biological people, or whatever he was raised as and, you know, has lived with for the past how many years. And is he a real panda or not? He deals with that along the way. And guess what line is also said? Poe's biological dad is like, I lost you once, I'm not losing you again. And Poe just says, you just did, as he walks away. This is after an argument to where Poe's dad like lied to him or something. I thought that was a very cool line, but again, there's the theme of, I lost you once, I'm not going to lose you again. And we learned by the end that Master Oogway actually sent Poe's biological dad a message from the spirit realm saying, hey, you gotta go find your son and like teach him chi. And this whole like chi thing is a new concept that's introduced in this movie. That's clearly just something because they're like, oh, Poe needs to learn something. Let's make him learn chi. He doesn't know that, and he needs to use it in order to defeat the bad guy. So I thought that was a little contrived, but overall, it was a fun movie. I liked it. And very similar themes to Madagascar too, but hey, you know, well, it is what it is. I said I was doing this list in no particular order, but I did have to save the best for last, being Shrek 2. obviously. Now, what separates Shrek 2 from the other movies is that the protagonist isn't meeting his own parents, he's meeting his love interest's parents. And plus, we never really see Shrek's parents, except for in Shrek the Musical, of course. What also separates this movie from the others is that Fiona knows her parents are alive, her parents know she's alive, and basically they invite her to this like sort of welcome back ball where she gets to show everyone her new husband, which they think is Prince Charming. But it's not Prince Charming, it's Shrek. You've seen this movie, I don't have to recap it, do I? Anyway, we'll go over the important points. And a very important point is also what separates this from other Meet the Parents sequels is that Shrek doesn't have an identity crisis. He himself knows he's an ogre and will always be an ogre, and he's not changing that. But he's willing to change it because how much he loves Fiona. It's not that he's actually torn between being an ogre and being a human internally. It's just externally, whatever makes Fiona the happiest is what he'll go with. He does all this for Fiona, not for himself. Not an ounce of him is persuaded by himself to become a human, but because the thought of making Fiona happier as a human, that's what causes him to do it, not from internally within himself. He's not torn between these two worlds. I just think that's, a very important distinction to make between the other movies, is that Shrek doesn't really have an identity crisis. He's just how far he's willing to go to be with Fiona, which I think is very sweet and very cute. And again, another thing that separates this from the other movies is that Fiona's parents chose to send her away. They weren't like some kidnapping, wartime thing going on. It's just that Fiona's parents chose to send her away. And now that she's back, there's kind of that sort of resentment towards them, or at least Shrek is mad at them for locking his wife up in a tower, basically, saying, why would you do this to your own daughter? I was just trying to protect her. And then, of course, there's the I lost you once, I can't lose you again thing, from Fiona's parents to Fiona, because they're like, we didn't lose you, we were locked in the tower, but we also want to be here for you now because we weren't there for you back then. Yeah, and of course the whole climax, holding out for a hero, one of the best cinematic moments in the entirety of cinema. You know the rest. So now that we've talked about all these movies, let's discuss whether or not it is a good idea to introduce a parent in the sequel. On one hand, yes, I do think it helps because it expands the world building, it expands the characters' relationships, and you sort of get to know more about the character and their childhood and how they were raised. But on the other hand, now that it's been done so many times, it's kind of seen as sort of a cop-out sort of plot line to go through of oh, the person you thought was dead is actually alive, and now they're here to, do whatever. And it's okay, I feel like we've seen this before. So if you're going to introduce a parent in a sequel, you really have to do it in a nuanced way because it's been done so many times before. With the exception of Shrek 2, I think the best utilization of a parent being introduced who's a parent of the main character, protagonist, is How to Train Your Dragon 2, because not only does it expand the relationship between the parent and the child, but the parent and the other parent, because, we never meet Poe's mom, and I guess Alex's mom and dad are already a couple, they're cute together, but it's mainly about Alex and his dad. But basically, with How to Train Your Dragon 2, there's Hiccup's relationship with his dad, Hiccup's relationship with his mom, and then there's parents' relationship with each other. That creates a fully formed triangle. Each one of those three characters are fully fleshed out and have their own ideas and ways to view things. And Hiccup is struggling between the two of them. Is he somewhere in the middle? And I think that sort of identity crisis is the one that pays off the most. But I also think a negative side of introducing a parent in the sequel is it feels like you're going backwards instead of forwards, I want to see a character move on with their life based on what happened in the previous movie, the things they learned, okay, what's going to happen now in the future? But instead, when they meet their parent, usually all the conflict and drama is about things that happened in the past. Oh, you left me. I thought you were dead. You were a terrible parent to me, whatever. Now, all that conflict is stuff that's happened in the past that we as viewers have never seen before. So now, if you're going to introduce a parent, it has to be them dealing with a conflict that is happening in the present actively to them, or else they're just going to be talking about the past the entire time, and that's no fun because we haven't seen the past. You got to make a prequel for that. In conclusion, I'm kind of glad that DreamWorks has sort of stopped this trend of just introducing a parent in the sequel, because I think we all kind of caught on to it and got pretty bored of it, and it now can just be seen as lazy writing, even though if you do write it really good, then it doesn't really matter. But most of the time, people will see it as a cop-out, as you don't know what to do for the sequel. So I'm glad they're sort of taking a break from that right now. Maybe in the future we'll get another one, who knows. But let me know, what are your thoughts on the Meet the Parents sequels? Which is your favorite Meet the Parents sequel? Are there other studios that have this trend, or am I just bullying DreamWorks? Let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video.